Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyasvarat tene brahma hridaya adikavaye muhyanti yat surayah tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra sargo mrisha dhamna svena sada nirastakohakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation, made of threefold gunas, appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion Maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amritadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahma Rishi. Go on drinking the sweet nectar day after day. So we are entering the 10th chapter of the 5th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. We have been seeing the story of Jadabharata, who is now born and completely abiding in self-knowledge and therefore being taken as a dunce, as a Jada, and that's called Jadabharata. And we saw how he was protected by the fierce form of the Divine Mother called Bhadrakali when he was about to be offered as a human sacrifice. Then, after that, we continue. He is going around like this without any worry about anything. And as he is walking around like this, one day a certain king of the area near Sindhu, so this is on the western part of Bharat, where there is a king called Rahugana. He is going in a nice palanquin, and in those days there are people who are carrying the palanquin manually. So he is going like this, and he is actually going to meet his divine sage, the great sage Kapila, who is by then he is there somewhere in the region. So he is going to meet great sage Kapila, and there is a river called Ikshumati there. It's flowing, and by that river side, when he is going by this palanquin, something happens, and one carrying the palanquin, one of the bearers had a problem, so they had to look for a alternate bearer. And by the time it so happened that by divine will, the great Bharata, Jada Bharata, was walking around there, and he was looking, as we already said, he was very young and muscular. He was very stout. He was very looking fit, and he looked like he can carry a heavy load. So because of that, the workers there, the king's attendants, they put him to work. They said, "Oh, we found the right guy to carry the palanquin, so let's take him." So he's asked to do this work, and he doesn't care. As we said, he was doing all kinds of work before. Also, people gave whatever work, and he was happy to do the work, get whatever they give, eat whatever they provide. So here also he was happy to do that. But he was, when he is carrying, he is not carrying in a proper way, because he is walking not at the same pace as the remaining. There are four people carrying the palanquin on four sides. The other three are walking properly, but Bharata, Jada Bharata, he is walking in a way that's not very in sync, and he is looking carefully at the ground, slowly walking, only taking one step at a time, stopping, and so on. So the king gets very annoyed. From within, he says, "Oh, bearers, what's going on? Why are you carrying me so irregularly?" Because the net effect is the palanquin is not going in a smooth way. So hearing this, the bearers, the other three of them, they are all very afraid of the king, and they are also no, they also don't want to unnecessarily be blamed. So they immediately address the king, "O great king, we are here trying to obey your commands and we are bearing it quite well, but this new man is not doing anything properly. He's stopping and starting every time. So king also peeps his head out and notices this, and then he realizes that this is the reason why there is this problem with the palanquin, because this person is not working well. And then he also thinks that if he continues like this, he will influence others and everybody will not do correctly. So he is also, being a king, he was bit proud about the fact that he is able to command all of them, and he was a little enraged too that this fellow was not listening to him properly. So he addressed in a very sarcastic way. Oh, he said, oh brother, you look very tired. So he was speaking in a sarcastic way. It's like, you've been single-handedly carrying this palanquin, it looks like, because he had just joined a little while ago. But the king says, oh, you've been carrying this for so long, you must be so tired, you're doing it single-handedly, you're sharing all the burden, you are also looking like you have no strength in your body, you are so thin. So you're saying everything in a sarcastic way, hinting that you are so stout, you are so heavy, and you are hardly carrying me for a little while. Why are you not able to do this properly? Instead, he spoke sarcastically. And hearing this, the great Bharata, Jadabharata, he was one with the infinite. He had no sense of I or mine. He was completely free of anything. So he did not even feel affected by any of these sarcastic words or the implied hint of anger or anything like that. He just continued walking the same way. And now the king Rahugana, he got really angry. He realized that his words are having no effect. So he says, what do you mean you are continuing like this? You are now as good as dead because of transgressing my commands. If you don't listen to me properly, I shall treat you like Yama, the Lord of Death, right? So this is the anger with which Rahugana addresses Jadabharata, and he is now filled with anger, he is now filled with ignorance, and he speaks in this way to this great sage who is one with the Supreme Being, and he is without any knowledge of this, without any knowledge of the real state of Jadabharata, who is, as we said, his spiritual glory is hidden, because he is looking outwardly uh, as first of all, having a stout body, but at the same time, not very clean, not wearing proper clothes, not looking very resplendent as normally the spiritual wisdom makes people appear to be. And so, with all this being hidden, he was being insulted by the king. So, calmly, Jadabharata returns and he addresses the king. He says, O king, you have been hinting that somehow I have just joined and therefore I should have no tiredness and I have not carried the burden at all. But in reality, what you have said is true, because the body has carried the palanquin, it has not touched me at all. He says, referring to me as the Supreme Spirit, he says, it is the body that is going, and it is the body that has goal of moving here and there, whereas I, the all-pervading Supreme Spirit, is what he implies by the I now. He says, I have never been touched by anything. So even any terms such as stout or lean, heavy or thin, all of these are only in reference to the body and not in reference to the Supreme Spirit. And only one attached to the body can be affected by being stout, by bodily ailments, by hunger, by fear, by desire, by old age, and all the rest. But the pure self is not affected by any of this. So when one is attached with the body, then death also comes, because anything that comes goes, it undergoes transformation. It is the law of nature, and therefore things come and go and gets born and dies. But the pure self is not affected at all. And also orders can be given only between a servant and a master, whereas in our case, there is no such fixed relationship because things keep on changing. Today you appear like you are the master, I am the servant, because you are the king and I'm carrying this. After death, next time perhaps you'll be the servant and I'll be the master. Circumstances keep changing. In other words, there is nothing fixed here. So then what is the point of being obsessed with the bodily identification? So tell me, I may be very stupid, so tell me if I'm wrong with anything. So listening to these words of Jadabharata, the king is now shocked. He is had no idea. He thought it was some dull and stout village fellow who was there and not obeying his orders, and now suddenly the king is jolted, because the king, as we saw, he was already on his way to meet the divine sage Kapila. So he's got some interest in this self knowledge and in understanding the Supreme Spirit, but he was also filled with pride when he addressed Jadabharata. And now, Jadabharata, having given the highest self knowledge, just like that casually, the king is shocked and he immediately comes out of the palanquin. He goes to the goes near Jadabharata and he asks his forgiveness. He touches his feet literally and he says, "Oh, great person, who are you? You are going around incognito, I can see. You seem to be wearing the sacred thread and you are going around without any identification otherwise, or you must be a great avadhuta, a great jnani. Whose son are you? Where are you born?" And in fact, he wonders, "Are you the sage Kapila himself who has come in disguise? Because I'm going to meet him, and yet you have come here and you are speaking the greatest wisdom that I was expecting to learn from Sage Kapila. I hope you are not Kapila himself," because he says, "I don't want to offend great sage like you. I may have made a huge mistake. As a king, I don't fear anything. I don't even fear the elements. I don't fear Indra. I don't even fear Shiva," he says, "but I fear offending a sage. And therefore, please tell me, you are going around with your wisdom disguised, you are free of any attachment, you are full of glory, your words are full of self knowledge, and I can see that whatever I was hoping to learn from the great sage Kapila, who's known as the avatar of the Supreme Lord himself. We have seen already the story of Kapila, who gave beautiful instructions to his mother Devahuti, and then he retired and he was gone as a renunciate. And so this Kapila was well known as the avatar of Supreme Being and as the greatest exponent of self knowledge. So the king says, "I was about to go meet this great Kapila, and yet here I have found you who is giving the same self knowledge." Again he says, "Maybe is it that the same Lord Kapila is going around incognito in your form?" And then he asks a question. He says, "Normally I know that the body can get tired because of fighting in a war and so on. So similarly, I thought perhaps you are tired and you are physically worn out for some reason. Now, it looks like you are speaking from a completely different platform." So then he tells me, he says um, that normally, if we look at the world, everything that happens gets transmitted through indirect effect. He says if a kettle of water is being burned by fire, then the heat of the water, the fire burns the water, he heats the water, and then the water in that, if there is rice, the rice is heated by the heat of the water, and then the inside of the rice is heated by the heat of the rice itself, and thereby the heat from the fire through the water through the rice gets transmitted. Similarly, identification with the body, he says, if the body is identified with something, just as the fire from the water gets transmitted indirectly from the water through the fire and then through the rice and into the soft grain that gets cooked. Similarly, he says, when the body is contacted with something, it affects the senses and then the mind and thereby the soul itself. So, in effect, he's asking, how is the soul then not to be affected when the body is affected? So, the whole question is, Bharata said the body is going through all these changes, but the soul remains unaffected. So he is asking a very logical question, because people take the soul to be identified with the mind and the body, and therefore he says when the body goes through something, it affects the mind, and the mind, whatever it goes through, affects the soul, and therefore you have to explain to me how the soul remains unaffected no matter what the body and mind go through. So he says, please cast a look at me with your compassion and let me know. I may be the king of men here, but I am only trying to understand the supreme knowledge, and I see that you have no agitation in you. You are full of compassion, and you seem to be fully tranquil. You seem to have no identification with the body. You seem to have a look of complete indifference, that is to say, no partiality or no attachment to anything. And therefore, he says, please let me know, because I have already, looks like, committed a great offense by offending a great soul like you. So please explain to me in detail the nature of self knowledge and how one remains like you. One is able to be completely unaffected regardless of the external circumstances and equanimous all the time. In essence, how can one abide in the supreme wisdom of total equanimity regardless of what the body and mind is going through and not be affected by it, unlike how the fire in the water through heat affects the rice cooking? Similarly, how can the soul residing in the body not be affected by what the body is going through? And how can one remain completely unaffected and equanimous? Please explain to me. So, this is the question he finally puts after understanding the greatness of Jadabharata. And with this chapter ends. Now, Jadabharata will give a detailed description to the king, his teaching. He has so far never bothered to teach anyone because he was not at all interested and nobody even bothered to ask him. Finally, by chance, by divine will, it so happened that he was brought into contact with this king, and the king asked him this question now, and this will elicit a very detailed exposition on self knowledge by Jadabharata, which we will see going forward. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.